what we're doing here is we are fixing this gap, people, and I'm going to show you that here in a minute. I'm getting the front of the hood lined up where I want it. Now, I've already done the body work over here on the left fender, so it's done. And before you attempt to do all this, if you're using used parts, and I will go ahead and tell you this is an aftermarket hood that we're working with here. Let me go ahead and, okay, that's a lot better. Now they look the same. Let me show you what's going on here with our aftermarket hood that we've had for 8 years and our supposedly OEM factory fenders.
Welcome to D.I.Y. Automotive School with my friend Pete and Minnie, the body shop girl. It's everything you need to know about cars and more.
So you see the gap on the back. The gap looks really good. I think we can use that. That will pass. Let's go over here on this side. I want to show you the gap on this fender. This is the closest I can get it, and you can see the gap on the fender there. It looks really good and nice and even and pretty much exact all the way from start to finish. But if we come over to this side, you can see that we got a nice even gap here. It looks exactly the same as the other side. But as we move up, you can see where the hood is basically overriding the fender. You can see that right here. And then you can also see where it's not in line with the cowling itself. So the first thing that we want to do to start out our gap, to find our gap so we get a nice even gap all the way down, is we want to come up here to the cowling and we want to see how much it's overhanging. Now we're going to go ahead and take that cowling and we're going to go with that opening. We're going to take a piece of tape and then we're going to bring that tape all the way down to where we want our gap to, where the gap is starting to look normal. Just like that. So let me take that tape off one more time and then we're going to stretch the tape and we're going to bring it up here. We don't want to overdo the gap. We want the gap to be nice. And there's our gap right there. That's what we want. So to start our journey out on this hood gap, I got it taped off with a nice piece of yellow tape, and I need to take my grinder and I need to grind this lip down. Okay, with my 3-inch Rolo-Lock grinder, my air grinder, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the metal on this edge to where the tape line is. That's it. And then we're going to do it again if we have to. We're going to check it. We're going to double, triple check it. And if I have to do it another time, I will. Let's go ahead and remove the excess metal that we don't want from this hood. Now, I will tell you that this is a skin. This is a hood skin on top of this frame structure underneath. So the more that I take out, what's going to happen, it is going to split that hood skin away from the lower section, the skeleton of the hood. So the more we take off, the more chance we're going to have of welding this lip back up so it's solid. Just as I expected, being an aftermarket hood that it is, look what happened. We actually split the roll. You can see it goes all the way up right here. Look at this. All right, so we did split the hood separate from the bottom, and this is called a This is called a lip. This is a lip of the skin that rolls over when they apply the skin to the frame structure. So that will require welding to get this back in shape, and it goes all the way up to here, which is telling me that this aftermarket sheet metal is very cheap and inexpensive. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and gently close the hood. And I can see that that wasn't enough that we took off. I can see that clearly. And we're going to have to take more off. Okay, if you see the lip that I just grinded off, I'm going to cut it off right here to where it stops, because we're going to need that to put that back on there. So when we go ahead and get the gap that we need, we will take this piece, we'll fold it underneath, and we'll spot weld all this back together to get it back in place. When I say spot weld, I'm talking underneath. We're going to have to weld all the way across this hood to weld that together to make it proper. Now I will mention, since we have to weld these two panels together, you could go ahead and eliminate that piece, and no one in the world would probably ever know about it. But being my friend Pete, I like to make sure that everything looks original factory, that it's never been tampered with or screwed around with. So I'll be adding the lip back onto it. But if you don't care about the factory look and you just want to get the hood line straight and all that, then throw that thing in the trash and just weld this edge up. Let's go ahead and pull our tape off and see what we got. Okay, before I go any further, I see a little imperfection over here on the hood, and I'm going to show you that real quick. I had to do some body work up on the fender here, and the body work's kind of hanging over, so I'm going to go ahead and clean that edge and get that excess Bondo off of there. And now if we look at the hood, we can see that our gap is really looking nice, and it's even, and we got a nice gap all the way down. So the next step in getting our hood the way that we want it, getting it all back into perspective and welding it all back together and everything else, the next thing that we got to do is I got to remove this fender, get this fender off, and then I will weld the hood while it's shut. I don't want to weld it while it's up in the air like that. I would rather do it where it's nice and level. So by removing this hood, I'll be able to access this and get it done and make it look really, really nice. Okay, we got our edge ready for welding. I'm not going to grind the top here because I don't want to warp it, because all we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on welding this edge back together all the way up to here. Now, I was telling you about our lip that rolls around, and I'm going to go ahead and install this back on the car. And the way that I'm going to do that, and another reason is because I don't want this to warp, I'm going to use, let me go ahead and show you. I'm going to use these C-clamps, vice grips. Now, one thing I did off camera that I should have showed you is after I got my edge ground down with my 36 grit roller lock, I went ahead and took a file, a metal file, and then I took my file and I filed that down. And the reason I did, in case there's any unevenness from using my grinder, and that's going to happen if you don't watch out, that's why I use the tape. What this does, this will get it all back in line and make it nice and even. So remember to use a file before you start your welding, and before you start your welding and after you use a grinder to cut the metal down. So I'm going to take these right here, and that one's a little tight, so we'll loosen it up. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add these to, I'm going to put these back on here, and I'm going to add these to my, you can see what's going on here. It's kind of tongue-tied right now getting this all set up. All right, so I got it clamped down in this area. So what I'll do is I'll start spot welding in between these clamps, and then I'll move my clamps down. Another thing that's going to give you a nice clean job is having a nice accurate welder that's going to do a professional job for you. I hate to disappoint you, but if you use a gasless welder, one of these MIG welders that don't use gas, you're probably going to screw this hood up. It's going to be a nightmare. This is a job that requires an accurate welder that's going to do a precise job and do a professional job where you aren't going to warp the hood and screw the edge up, because if you screw this edge up and you warp it, then you're going to have to buy another hood. And one more thing that I like to keep handy as I am welding to cool the metal down, I like to keep some water and an old sponge. And what this does, this actually chases the heat out and eliminates any type of warpage that we might run across. So we're going to leave that right there. The wire that I'm using on this is 023, very important. That is very thin wire for a very accurate job. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and repeat my process. I'm going to go ahead and take this down here, just like this. Go ahead and start doing that now. Alright, now that I got it spot welded onto the situation and everything is back in line and in order, now what I'm going to do to make it a more comfortable job on me, I'm going to go ahead and shut the hood. And now what I can do, I can go ahead and start welding this edge back together. If you notice, by using an accurate welder and precisely making the right settings for your welder and using the right wire, you're going to get a nice clean weld on it. You can see the heat coming off it as I add my sponge and my water. So then I'm going to come down here where it's already cool. And then I'll do a little bit more. And then I'll just work my way, like I said, into the center. Okay, we have just finished welding up the lip of our hood so we can manipulate our way into getting a nice gap. What I got to do now is I have to wait till tomorrow because I don't have any more flapper discs, and if I use my 36 grit Rollo lock pad on this, it might eat too much off, and then we'll have to come back and re-weld it. So I'm gonna wait until tomorrow. I'll get my my flapper disc. I'm gonna get a 36 grit flapper disc, and that'll clean that edge up real nice. And then what I'll do is I'll go over it with a file and make it real nice, and then we're gonna look and see what we got on the bottom. And then you're gonna say to yourself, if I ever do that, I'm putting my lip, the roll around lip, back on. Okay, here's a spot right here where we actually burn through. So what I'll do, I'll take my welder and I'm going to spot weld that area. All right, with that taken care of, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my 36 grit roller lock because we got all the meat off, and now what I got to do, I got to fine tune it, and I don't want to burn through again. So I'm going to use this one with a 36 grit on it to fine tune that, and then we're going to finish this up. Okay, at this time, what I want to do now is I want to mount the fender on there. Now I'm not going to bolt the whole thing on, I'm just going to get the top of the fender lined up so we can get this gap cleaned up. So we're going to go ahead and get the hood closed. And our gap is looking really good. It's a little wide up on the top there. Yeah, I like it. I like the gap. So you can see the gap is looking really, really nice. But we got a problem here, and I'm going to show you what the problem is. Everything looks really nice till we get to this point here, and it's a little bit wide right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to build this edge up with some weld, and then we're going to grind it down, and then we should be okay. All right, let's pull our tape off and let's see what we got now. And we still got to do a little bit more welding on it, probably, just to clean it up. But this should have fixed our gap up and made it nice and even, which it did. So if you look at it now, you can see that gap is nice and even. See how nice that is? We don't have a big void right here anymore. I'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit more. I'll add a little bit more weld to it. And I think we got our gap exactly how we want it. I'm gonna clean this edge up nice and clean, just like I want it. Okay, that's done. We're going to need to do some minor body work in this area right here. You can see there's a couple black spots. That's telling me that's low right there. But other than that, the hood's not warped. We did a good job. We kept the weld down on a low heat range so we wouldn't warp the hood. And our lift came out really, really nice. And I think it's going to work out great. You notice it was a little bit sharp right there. I'm just going to roll that edge a little more. And there you go. It's a done deal. Okay, there you go. There's the situation. You seeing it just like I am. I got to adjust this hinge. It's a little high. There we go. But now I only got 2 bolts holding the fender on. Once I get the fender where I want it, when it's all bolted in place, you can see that gap is pretty much perfect. So I think I did a good job on this. I think the owner's going to be happy. And I think we brought it to almost semi-concourse restoration that we're trying to get. So this is Pete, my friend Pete, your friend Pete, right here at DIY Auto School, trying to get the Mustang done, trying to get this thing out of my shop and out of my hair. And that just made it one step closer right there. Take it easy. I hope you learned something on this. And we actually got a deck lid coming in. The deck lid on this car was completely rotted. And I might have to do the same thing to the deck lid to make it fit proper. You know how aftermarket parts are. You know how they fit. And I'm praying to God that it's going to fit good where I don't have to do all the work that I did to the hood. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching D.I.Y. Automotive School. Classes don't stop till you know everything.